Stereotypically, boys are taught to be tough, right? To push through the pain and pick themselves back up, perhaps even hide what they're really feeling. Well, one former football pro who you would assume would fit that mold, he broke it.
Which leads to my last Jeff Stoutland quote. Hungry dogs run faster. Thank you, Philadelphia.
That's former Philadelphia Eagles center Jason Kelce getting quite emotional during a recent press conference in which he announced his retirement. And it wasn't just Jason with misty eyes. His brother Travis Kelce was weepy as well. This public display of emotion from these two brothers begs the question, what did Mama Kelce, as she's been called, do to raise such emotionally available boys? Studio 5 parenting contributor Heather Johnson has some insights. She's here to share 5 ways you can help your boys feel more connected to and validated in their feelings. Hey, Heather. I actually don't know if I agree with the words I just said. I think that stereotype has really, I won't say been squashed the last little while, but I feel like we made great progress with boys and with men. Would you agree with that?
We're trying. We're for sure trying. There is still this underlying socializing that happens, right? Where girls can be emotional, they're taught to not be aggressive, they are supported in being nurturers. Then we have boys, right? They're taught to be aggressive, they're taught that emotions are bad, they still hear that, and they need to learn how to be self-reliant. So there are different messages. I think more importantly, when we look at boys and girls, what we want to understand is that they do start at a deficit because there's a huge gap between what boys actually feel and what society deems acceptable for them to share.
Okay.
There is a big gap. I mean, even when we watch the Kelce brothers, right, we watch that and go, wait, those are men crying. I mean,
and that's true. That did cause quite a reaction. Like, people were astounded to see emotion pouring out of a grown football player's eyes.
For sure. And so we think that maybe boys don't experience the same emotions, and that's not true. They experience them. It's just society tells them that it's not okay to share them like it is for girls. So yes, we are making great strides, but are we there yet? Is there still more room? Yeah, there is.
You say emotional intelligence has been found to be more important than even IQ, even brain smarts when it comes to children being successful. Is it true that girls have an easier time or a better ability to grab on to a higher EQ than boys?
Yeah, I do think that they have an easier ability, but not because they're necessarily born with more capacity as much as they don't face the societal pressures that boys face. Girls are allowed to show emotion. Boys are still suppressed when it comes to emotion.
And does showing emotion translate to higher EQ? Are those correlated? Are those connected?
Being able to show them, being able to manage them, absolutely, right? So it's not just experiencing the emotions, it's experiencing them and knowing what to do with them.
Got it.
That's going to raise that EQ. So we want to teach our boys, not just, oh, you're feeling mad. We got to teach them what to do when they
But they have to have the space to feel first.
They do. They have to have that space.
That
absolutely.
makes sense. Extra energy then required of parents, of grandparents to help coach these boys along toward that stronger emotional path?
I think it's worth us, if you have boys, if you're a grandparent or a parent with boys around you, to just realize that they might need more attention to put towards emotion.
Okay.
It really starts with the basics, right? Where we're looking at our girls, we tend to only talk to girls about emotions. In fact, we tend to look at our boys and go, hey, go play while I talk to your sister. We tend to have those conversations. Boys don't often get emotionally based conversations from their parents, just girls do. So we want to start by making sure that we're talking to our boys about emotions in the first place. The more we offer up our emotions to our boys, the more they're willing to offer back theirs to us. And so if you have boys, recognizing, share them, but actually talk to them about emotions. And if you want to know when, it's really good to talk to boys right before bed. So once they process the day and they're tired, talking to them when their guard is down, they're much more likely to have an emotional conversation where they're talking about how they felt about something or open to learning about emotions when they're a little bit tired. So right before bed's a really good time to do that. But we have to start there. We have to start by actually having these conversations with our boys. We don't.
This next piece of advice sort of prompted a rumble in our Studio 5 production meeting, not because it was surprising per se, but to hear you validate it, someone of your expertise and professional credentials, I think was really something. Arrange opportunities to play with girls.
Yes, to play with girls. So here's what happens. When you get a bunch of boys together, they perpetuate the stereotype. So you gather a bunch of boys and they're all gonna come together and nobody's gonna let anybody else show emotion, be weak, right? Be wimpy. They're gonna perpetuate that stereotype. So breaking free of that, of course they're gonna play with boys. But how cool to set up opportunities for them to play with girls, where they get to see a different side of emotion, where they get to see girls experience them and express them, and they don't get in trouble for them, and nobody calls them weak. And boys have an opportunity to learn by watching and then participating in different emotional connection, right? Different emotional processing. So find ways for them to play with girls instead of just with boys. They perpetuate all of that when boys are together, right? You got to be tough.
This was surprising to me as a mom of one boy, grew up with all girls. I had I still feel in moments quite insecure about, am I doing this right? I don't quite know what to do with you or around you or for you. But, you know, Boston had quite a few female friends, little girlfriends, right? Younger. And I remember questioning that. Is that okay? But I appreciate that validation.
Well, and even knowing, it's really interesting when you watch boys play with girls, even young, like you're talking about, when they learn to share those emotions, even express emotion, like when they're playing with dolls, things like that. And we're talking young ages. They actually are more tender and more nurturing when they become fathers, right? It increases their capacity to experience and feel emotion.
Let's push through these next few quickly. Don't punish emotion.
Don't punish emotion. We tend to do that. So the emotions that boys tend to express the most are anger and frustration. Those are the exact emotions that we punish first. So when they go to show emotion, they show it and they're like, I'm feeling these things and I'm telling you about them. And then immediately we punish the fact that they just shared them. So we've just told them that when they share emotion, they're gonna get in trouble by us when they do it. So we've got to make sure we're not punishing emotion. We can punish behavior, but not emotion.
You want us to model and teach emotional vocabulary to our young men.
They don't have the words. They don't know. It's very much like when you have a toddler who you're waiting to get the words to be able to communicate with you. You know, that frustrating few months where they don't have the words yet. It's just like that with our boys. Unless we give them the vocabulary and teach them the words, they don't know what they're experiencing. They haven't lived long enough. So if we give them that vocabulary, they can then convey that to us. And then we want to make sure that we're teaching them coping skills. Now, to do that, we've got to model them also. We want to teach them the emotions are awesome. Feel them. That's fine. But we need to be really aware of how we behave when we feel them.
Can I put you on the spot with a question that I hope is okay that I ask? We're in the middle of a boy crisis, right? The numbers show that boys are less likely to pursue and exceed higher education, suicide rates, the depression rates. Boys are being hit really hard. Is there a concern about raising soft boys? Do you worry about us tipping too far in a certain direction, that certain gender strengths, or I don't want to say stereotypes, but are there for a reason?
I think it's really important to realize that any time in parenting, in relationships, if we let ourselves skew all the way one way or all the way the other way, we're going to run into trouble. Always, right? We look at the models, we look at the research, it's going to show us that extremes cause problems. So we want to make sure we're not looking to go all the way this way or all the way this way. We want a really great balance. We want them to be self-reliant. We want them to be strong and tough in the right ways and also know that it's okay to be human.
Great answer.
So we want that balance. Just know, again, in parenting, we really want to avoid the extremes. Almost think of it like a bullseye. We want to find ourselves hanging out in the middle the most instead of finding ourselves on those extremes. We run into trouble. The imbalanced causes problems.
Tough and strong in the right situations, emotionally available in the right situations too. Heather, thank you so much. Heather's contact information is available on the Studio 5 website.